Hey, all you beautiful folks out there in the land of plenty. Hope you're having a good one on this Monday afternoon. It is February 16th, 2026. I decided I'm going to start going back to video on the Wintercasts and the conversation shows as I start interviewing more friends throughout the realm of, because I will be putting this on QTube, on Qortal, as well as LooshTube. Video just seems to do better. And so you can choose to listen to it as an audio podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or Apple Podcasts, or wherever Substack sends it to. Watch it on Substack or watch it on YouTube. So, yeah. But I wanted to just touch base really quick here as I aim to keep this short and sweet. Had a really fun weekend at BoatSmith here this weekend, which is the 8th annual Whitewater Festival here in our tiny little town on the Smith River on the border of California and Oregon. And we had hundreds of boaters from all over the world converge here to ride the rapids for 3 or 4 days. We were going to get on the water as a family yesterday, but just we're getting... the winter storm has come, and we were getting pummeled with hail and pretty cold temps. And we decided to opt out of that experience on the river, which I was pretty happy we did once I was looking outside at about an hour into what our trip would be to torrential downpour and very cold temps. So instead, I actually had to go back and break down some stuff from my DJ set the night before. And I was pretty tired. I played from 10 at night till 2 in the morning outside by the river. Really fun set, awesome, fun crowd. The boater scene is unique in that these people know how to party, but are also outdoorsy. You know, folks that are thrill seekers, but are also connected with nature, just inherently through the activity of whitewater and, you know, taking the chances and the risks that go along with that lends to a certain type of personality that I like to hang out with. So we had a lot of fun. I was only going to play 2 hours. I ended up playing 4 hours. I didn't record my set. I wish I did. It was a banger, a lot of good dance music, but I was able to test out some tracks for Confluence, which I'll be playing at the end of April in Texas. I hope you guys can make it out. I think the last week of April. It starts on the 22nd, and I'll be there for 4 or 5 days. I think I get in Thursday and I leave late Monday afternoon. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 5 days, baby. 4 nights of Confluence. Super pumped. I can't wait to see you guys there. It's going to be it's just the best event of the year, because sadly we haven't been able to get a Music and Sky dialed in yet. It's just been a whirlwind for us in our personal lives and our professional lives with Matt Owen and I, and just haven't had the bandwidth, to be honest, to even consider what Music and Sky could be like this year. We've had some different offers from locations and venues, but once again, we really want to do it on our own land. It's just become a monumental task to do that with just how busy we are and all the life changes with new babies. Not me, but Matt and Owen having new babies and literally moving to new cities and job changes. It's just been a whirlwind since 2024. And so bear with us. We're not giving up on Music and Sky. It's just taking longer than we would like to get everything dialed in terms of the private trust and the PMA and the ministry and then of course the land acquisition and the funding and everything. And we'll be updating the community very soon on that. So but I just wanted to touch base quickly on this Epstein nonsense. I can't seem to get away from it. It's everywhere I look online, and it's really driving me offline, as opposed to, I think, a lot of people who are probably absolutely addicted to the content, but I'm not even looking for it. And if I go on social media, any sort of algorithmic feed, it's Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. And you know, everything's by design in the conventional interweb space. And while there's a lot of, conspiratards that are taking a first grade truther sort of take on everything and are basically just really mimicking and parroting what the mainstream news is saying and are getting millions of views, which is not the greatest thing, but also everything's got lots of facets to it, guys. There's good things here in that there are people who were completely shut off to this idea that there is darkness and there are people doing these types of things here that are potentially coming around to this conclusion finally, like, whoa, there are some really psychotic, creepy people trying to run the world here, doing really terrible things to innocent souls. And of course, anybody who has followed Alpha Vedic and myself, or had been in the channels that I've been in for the last 2 decades, we've known about this. Known about this since the late 90s and went down all those rabbit holes and listened to the whistleblower testimonies and the crazy forums back in the day that had documents and had testimonials and all sorts of, I mean, it was a lot of whistleblower testimony, which I know can often be questionable, but then there were paper trails to follow. There were great researchers unveiling all this stuff in the late 90s and early 2000s. And I wasn't equipped back then, actually. I was in my late teens, early 20s going through this, and it definitely sort of spun me out for a while. I was absolutely obsessed with researching this stuff, from underground bases and reptilian bloodlines and the Illuminati and their relationship to the money system and everything. To the point where I remember my father telling me that I need to go get outside and actually start doing something with my life. And I was like, Dad, you don't understand. You don't understand what's going on. And he's like, and to his great wisdom, he was like, how is that really affecting your life right now? So I went through the fire back when there wasn't as much support. There wasn't this like prevalent conspiracy culture that there is now, which also makes you wonder, like, what is the role of conspiracy culture? Because it's definitely gone mainstream. It's everywhere you look. And obviously, there is good and bad to this, but what is the design? There is a design at play if it is being run through conventional circles, because these systems have a specific, not only do they have specific agendas it's due to the top-down infrastructure of conventionality, otherwise, i.e. Mainstream media, even alternative media now has the top-down, coming from a specific agenda, oftentimes even shareholders that are running these alternative media companies that have specific, timelines and meetings around their quarterly budgets and targets for bringing revenue in, and then what's the strategy on the stories that they'll be telling, and this has to go through editors that are specifically given orders, oftentimes by business people running these boards, from the Turning Point USA to Infowars, etc. We want to think that this sort of alternative media is actually independent journalism, but it's such a huge, huge industry at this point that it really has become the mainstream. And so when these same talking points that you hear on Jim Maurer or Bill Maurer, or whatever that dude's name is, the comedian, news dude, to Joe Rogan, to I was thinking Jim Brewer, to all of those sort of conservative talk shows, and the fact that there is just blatant, continual Epstein mania happening around this. I mean, I've never seen anything. This makes 9/11 almost. Well, 9/11 was a unique experience because it was actual. It was a physical, experience of trauma that happened to a lot of people, and we all witnessed it in real time, right? Where this is a different drop, sort of. I guess you could relate this to Nixon and Watergate. I've heard a lot of people talk about in relation to it. Of course, this makes Watergate look like a kindergarten expose. But the similarities are in that that this is government unveiling corruption of government. And we know with the Watergate scandal, there was a plan of action there. I think it was the Dark Journalist has done a pretty good job of unveiling that it's not so black and white with the Watergate scandal, and that there were specific powers that be that wanted Nixon out, that wanted regime change, and also wanted to initiate a lot of doubts around government and around the institutions that are respected and loved in America, right? That we are the land of the free and we have where democracy rules. To start already back then, the larger consciousness movement out of the sort of American perfectionism towards a globalist ideal, right? And to start that liberal, especially, this was really the foundation of neoliberalism, or not neoliberalism in the traditional sense, but sort of that academic leftist liberalism, right, where U.S. government is corrupt, and which it is, but so we need to look towards the people taking over and ironically creating more government, but through a people-led revolution, but still using democracy, but by adding a lot more social systems at play that that while holding the corrupt corporatist conservatives, holding them to the fire, their feet to the fire, still we have government and other politicians that are on the leftist side that we can trust in, as long as they promise to bring in all these new social programs, then we'll be happy with our revolution. And then, of course, on the flip side of that, then you are able to bring in Reaganomics and conservatism when the other side reacts to the increasing radicalism of, especially in the academic university circles, college students and stuff. So it's just playing each side back and forth. This is the age-old game going back to Rome and ancient times of using politics and using rhetoric, solipsism, and ignorance to drive humanity towards systemic control. And while I often cringe at the simplistic notion that these are just systems at play and not evil actors, because these systems require evil actors. They require even a hereditary line of evil actors from bloodlines to basically work within these systems and keep these systems progressing forward. There is a still sort of a grander energetic consciousness, you could say even like egregoric energy, that is transcendent of any individual actors. Once again, I've been stating this many times, like these people, the Bill Gates, the Klaus Schwabs, the Donald Trumps, the Bonos, the Michael Jordans, even. Al Jordan could be a unique individual character. Interesting that he's suing NASCAR right now, I just saw. But even the Kobe Bryants, let's say, the Harrison Fords, or Tom Hanks, all of these famous people, right? Doesn't matter what circle they're in, the Lady Gagas, etc. They are playing a role. They are enacting a specific role within a play, whether they know it or not, that is being driven by a specific narrative generated by a unconscious mass unconscious energetic. Now, this can sound quite Jungian, but I think when we look at it in terms of energy and confluence of of thought forms that are based around consensus. That's what's driving reality. It's not some grand master programmer. It's not some sort of simulation where there's some grand genius program or entity, whether that be AI or alien or something. I don't see this reality being run by any of that. It is a much more organic, consciousness-driven, consensus-oriented reality that is ontologically real, in that this is a created space has a grand design that is real, that did not come out of some goo through the zoo to you, as Darwinian evolution likes to propose, but comes from a grand design, from a divine creation that is superlative and transcendent from any way that we can actually try to logically break down through either inductive or really deductive logic. But it is a place here that by design is miraculous, that is magical, is grounded in real science, in that there is actual logical operations that happen based on laws. And these laws are rational and independent from any sort of relativistic, attention or solipsistic mentality. In other words, while we have individual consciousness and we are each an individual node here, this reality is collective, right? It is grounded and real outside of each of our individual perspectives. However, our individual perspectives add to a piece of the reality. So it is consensus driven, but the laws that run it are universal. They are transcendent, they are rational, they cannot be manipulated or moved by any individual node. But that's not to say that each individual node, you, yourself, me, anybody here taking part as a bit of consciousness, doesn't have a very, very important role to play, not only in your own life's journey over and over again, but in terms of the overall matrix of reality within the confines of the universal laws. And that is very empowering to remember, because when we understand the role that we have to play, and that is a role that we have given ourselves, and it's not something we can really back out of. Nature will bitch slap us back into our destiny, and our destiny is not fatalistically derived. It is derived from our actions, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, everything that we put into the matrix. So if we try to deny that, it's going to lead to hard times. And then hard times lead to strong men, and strong men lead to weak societies. And no, just kidding. But it's a self-balancing system. It's perfect in that way. And so what does this have to do with the Epstein files? Well, the Epstein files, this latest drop, is another test, I believe. It's a test, as everything is in this reality, on not only on how we interact with it, how we engage, what we choose to accept as reality, and what we choose to interface with. For me, I think we can be taken on in a number of different ways. I think we need to be skeptical. We need to, without falling into cynicism, we need to also be rational and understand that this place is a balance, right? There's extremities on both sides, but there's also the neutrality, and we want to be within that balanced sector as much as we can, not only for our health and our well-being and for the well-being of our family and our relationships, but also in terms of our soul's progression. And that's not to mean we can't become completely distraught from these truth drops, depending on, how valid they are, and have emotions around that, and feel even go into despair a little bit, going through all those emotions, right? Fear, healthy fear, desire to have justice for those innocents who have been deeply affected by this evil, and then going through all that, through a balanced interchange of understanding our deep desires and our deep emotions, balancing the male and female, the yang and the yin, the need to go out and fight fire with fire, and then the need to heal with love, to have righteous indignation, and to have complete forgiveness, right? Finding that middle path, that Christ middle path, and then enacting that in your day-to-day life. That is the balancing act. And it becomes very difficult to do that when you are fully enmeshed and entranced and completely, as I was in those late 20s, obsessed with the rabbit holes, obsessed with finding the truth, obsessed with understanding how this evil exists, and is this all real? That can only get you so far. And I think any quote unquote truther will go through that initiation of fire by fire. And I think actually those that are going through it right now, it's different than when I went through it. It's better in some ways, and it's worse in some other ways. It's better in that you have a lot more support for others going through it, just because of the interconnectivity of the internet now. But it's also worse because we are in information overload. There's just a massive amount of false information, junk conspiracy, just an overflowing tide of bots and AI distortion. And so it actually takes a lot more discernment now than in the early days of the internet, where it was more human driven. It was more true in the sense that these were real researchers having their little, even Web 1.0, websites up, and the forums being run by true, authentic people. But then you also did have the Intel run forums. You had those operators in there creating all sorts of distortion as well. And so you still had to have a great amount of discernment. And probably even back then, it was a lot easier to come in and as a bad actor, because there was just less of us doing it, where now there seems to be more eyes on the prize. But long story short, in the end, nothing's really changed, because it's the core fundamentals are always at play. The core first principles of seeking truth, finding yourself, following your true path without, once again, going out of balance to an extreme. So one total imbalance on one side is just completely shutting yourself off from everything, just focusing on your daily delights, and hey, I don't want to know about any of that. I just want to have my best life ever. I'm going to be ordering all my stuff from Amazon and eating at fast food chains and just taking everything in as this very sort of gluttonous Epicurean way. That's not going to serve anybody. That's what traditionally a lot of people in this community call normies. I don't like that term, but closed off, especially if they are aware of these things, but they're making the decision to close off and not serving their communities or their family. Obviously, that is an extreme that will lead to a lot of pain and a destiny that is not something to be looked forward to. And then also you have the other extreme, which is the righteous indignation, truther, going down every rabbit hole and completely angry at the world and at anybody who's not doing it, yelling at people in public, completely forgetting about their neighbors and their family because they've become so obsessed with finding the truth, seeing everything as evil, becoming totally black-pilled. That right now, I think, is an extreme danger, because that's sort of more accepted. Like, hey, that's okay. That's part of, you're a true truther now, right? You're fully black-pilled. But energetically, I think that's just as dangerous as the other side, right? It's, the total closed off, head in the sand person. And they are different in the way that they are both negative and positive, right? With extremes. Because with any extremity, you do have extreme positivity, extreme negativity. You have on both sides, right? So, but in the middle, that's the path forward for truly growing up. And this is known in martial arts. This is known in athletics, long distance running, anything you're doing in terms of having longevity and health, it's about that balanced perspective, that balanced strategy. And so, yes, being responsible with our time and our attention is super important. Being aware and being like, okay, yeah, let's just, listening to people that you trust that are doing the work to look into this stuff and, getting this here and there in terms of true investigative reporting, for instance. And, okay, what's their take on Epstein? How does this affect me? How does this affect my portfolio or my Bitcoin holdings or my silver and gold or the farm that I run, right? Or the community that I'm involved with. That's like good to know. Without getting, once again, into an obsessive attention on this. Unless that is your vocation, you are an investigative reporter, and God bless you, because like a lot of those more extreme vocations, it's sort of, you've decided to be a sacrificial lamb in some ways for the greater good. And a lot of times we have to ask ourselves, with taking on that role that within the stage play, if that is of the best service. And if it is, then probably going to have your destiny will be massively affected, where you will be going through the fire for a bit and potentially a next lifetime, or I'd like to think, though, if it's truly out of the greatest service and there was massive sacrifice done in a specific life stream, then on the next go around, you very well could have a nice, quiet, content, private life. That's sort of how I see how destinies play out, depending upon sort of the roles that you decide to take within your specific life stream, this specific lifespan. So it's a very balanced perspective, I think, that we need to have. I keep going to balance on this, but it just makes the most sense to me. I see so much imbalance when I listen to some of these YouTubers or watch these YouTubers or influencers that are in the conspiracy circles or in the purist truther circles, just casting down anybody who's doing investigative reporting on the Epstein stuff as, idiots just, falling for the greater psyops. And it's like, are you also falling for the greater psyop of allowing your ego and your "I know more truth than you" rhetoric to create an energetic egregore of its own that is now putting specific sort of like truthers in different boxes and creating a lot more strife amongst people who are in the end just trying to figure out what the hell's going on? And so I have compassion and patience for anybody who's going down these rabbit holes, this pathway towards understanding why this is happening and how this is working. However, once again, like just a reminder, and because I did it and I know how damaging it was to my health, if you can find that balance and find a way to come to a parity, a neutrality, not saying that you are looking the other way for the quote unquote evil or finding any ways to justify that. No, like these people, not only will their destiny do it to them via other nodes of consciousness. In other words, if someone is doing child sacrifice or all this, I don't even like to talk about it on the stream, this stuff, then an interesting thing with that too is, and it's a sort of a sick perversion of the karmic destiny model, is that these bloodlines, they actually torture themselves. They torture their progeny. And then it's like this sick cycle of being tortured and torturing others. And it's just, obviously super dark. And that's why the darkness, the shadows, need to be completely brought out into the light, because then they go away, because a shadow is just the lack of light. And so that's, I think, part of what's going on too, right? It's not a great awakening simply because the counterbalance is the great deception. However, I would say the general trend is that, once again, I believe we are moving out of the dark ages, and this is sort of that collapse of that into a bit of a renaissance. And I may be wrong, but a lot of signposts are pointing that way. And we typically, at the end of an age like that, it has been a little bit more dark, because everything undulates and flows and in ebbs and tides, of low and high tide, just like anything in nature, right? Everything is vibration and rhythm and all these things I've talked about forever. As above, so below. There are these universal mechanisms in truth, reality. And so I believe that tide's been very low and it's coming back up. And part of that is it's washing away all this filth. And so let's not get caught up in the tide and swept away. Let's ride it if we can. Let's it's a good analogy, get the surfboard and have a little fun, but also be wary of the dangers. You don't want to be swept away. There are sharks in the water, and we need to be on point, right? And so, this is a common sense stuff, of course, but I think a message that needs to be heard, because that's something in Alpha Vedic with AlphaCast we always, I think, really nailed well. It's like finding that middle path. We don't need to go to these extremities of being the chorus of core truthers, or being the most sort of like denier. I am, what is Snopes, the Snopes grandma with the cats in her house, right? It's like such extremities there. So, and then, we can be aware of all these things. We can take a step back, look from a higher angle, eagle view, bird's eye view of everything, and make the proper decisions on how we can best serve ourselves, our family, our community, and do it out of service. And I'm excited about what I'm involved with right now, Qortal, just watching that project finally really start to take off in a way that I've been waiting for the last 4 years, with the latest updates to QDN, and there's going to be some more updates coming on that, some small fixes. The Qortal data network to allow for censorship-proof data that is individually owned on a separate network to flow without any impediment, without any control, without any top-down corporate oversight or weird technocratic strings being pulled. That's cool. I think that's going to be really needed as we move into this new renaissance of interdependence, of much more decentralization, much more sort of bottom-up governance, and really a lot more clarity around not only what the individual's role is in these systems, these new systems, but also clarity on how a community is supposed to work properly. And it may be that these are just smaller pockets, and we're getting out of these ideas of larger, nationalistic concepts, or even, ideas around states or counties. This could be actually transcended across space and be more local governance that is using something like Qortal to maintain a consensus and maintain a sense of community, but also physically tied together. Like I do believe, obviously, being in the physical, being in nature, growing your own food, having your own partnership with your neighbors in a way that is allowing for barter and commerce and supporting each other and all that is going to be fundamentally important moving forward. And also at the same time, though, being able to properly stay connected online is just where we are now in 2026. I do not see us, I think this renaissance will require that until we become fully psychic and not need the binary code anymore. It'll be a transcendent analog, communication that is instantaneous and holographic, just like the nature of this reality. Okay, that's all, guys. I hope you got something out of this. It's good to be back on video. It's good to get back in the seat, and I'll be interviewing more folks coming up, and we'll do it on video. And then I can start doing some screen shares and show things, and especially stuff that's happening on Qortal, because the more of us get on there, the better. It'll just make that platform more redundant and resilient, and also, I'll have some more updates on other things I'm doing. If you do need website built or have any needs online, Winner Digital, I'm really focused on that right now and helping people do commerce online better, create community online, build their business, be an entrepreneur, and do it in a way that will allow for new levels of prosperity for all of us in this network so that we can have more time to do what we love to do the most, which for everybody, for anyone, is different. For me, it's surfing and being with my family and having adventures and reading. I'm about to finish a Henry James, The Bostonians. I'm on the final chapter, maybe. Really fun read that takes place in the late 19th century and is a play off the sexes. And what a forward-thinking book that is. I'll probably do a winter cast on that. That may just be audio only, but I'm really enjoying that book. And it's very on point and tongue-in-cheek and a bit sarcastic, but very poignant breakdown of the hypocrisy around people involved in these types of movements, right? Whether that be of late, maybe the Me Too or the, Black Lives Matter or Antifa, these big social movements that on the face of them have, the social justice warrior mentality has a lot of important elements to it, right? To bring justice to those who are being unfairly treated in society, to bring proper equity and inclusion and all of these, comfy words used. But in the end, a lot of these are essentially co-opted movements run by people that never got enough attention as a kid. It's just human nature comes into play, and anything systemic like that runs into power structures. And of course, you have revenue models and fame and fortune and everything tied to that versus a more individualistic sort of, artistry around people that are doing good in the world. Doesn't have to be behind some major branded movement. So James was on that, like freaking G back in the 19th century, breaking this down. And plus just, some really interesting segments in that book that I'll read from around gender ideology, the role of man and woman in society, and also conservatism versus, progressivism, and the overall, just mission of men versus women, and how it's so funny how this cyclically has come back in a big way. You have a lot of these conservative notions around the role that women should play, just being in the home as a homemaker, and then contrasting, of course, with modern feminism. And that's a huge, huge theme in this book, written over, I don't know, what was this, I think I have to look and see when he wrote this. I want to say in late 1870s, early 1880s, mid 1880s. Okay, guys. So always reading and just trying to build my business out so I have more free time, right? And while at the same time helping people thrive with a skill set that I have and that my company has. So if you need any help, you have a website, you have any sort of online presence, and you need help from somebody that hopefully you trust, in me, I'm here. You can hit me up, DM me, hit me up on Substack, or you can find me on Instagram at DJ Mike Winner, or just holler at me at Mike at Winner, and that's without an E, WINNR.digital. WINNR.digital, and be happy to audit or take a look at your site or whatever and let you know how we can help you out. And we work on everything. So, and helping people really sort of go in the right direction on taking control of your data and the systems you use to be more secure, and, trusting these large third-party technocratic run systems less and less. And, we haven't figured out everything. Especially on the financial side, Stripe is really dominating e-commerce and the credit card gateway system that's run through websites, and that's a big thing we need to figure out. And of Qortal could play a massive role in that, and allowing people to do commerce outside of fiat, but also outside of the big banking institutions. So these are all things I'm working with clients to figure out, but converting a lot of sites back to WordPress right now. People were on these third-party software as solution sites, and we're realizing all of their information and data is being sold and tracked and used against them in their community. So yeah, if any of this is jiving with you and you do need help, just holler at me. And I love you guys. It's great to show my face and be on video again. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys at Confluence and at other events coming up. Love you all and just wish you the best. Peace.